guys have any crazy stories to, try and get someone into MMA? So, I've been a massive fan of MMA basically my whole life. So, I'm always trying to get new eyes on this beloved sport of ours. So, I got a couple favorites I like to toss out, toss to people, have them try and get some interest going. But have you ever accidentally shown someone maybe the wrong starter fight, I guess you could say? I've shown someone a couple fights where maybe it wasn't the right idea, and I've even shown a particular fight, on the date. So with that random foreshadowing out of the way, today let's take a look at UFC 140, which is headlined by the controversial Jon Jones, defending his light heavyweight title against Lyoto Machida. This is our second Patreon request ever, so shout out to Tom Keegan. Thanks, bud. I love doing these. These are so cool. UFC 140 took place on December 10th, 2011 in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, with it raking in just under $4 million at the live gate with over 18,000 in attendance. It managed to snag a 485,000 buys, which is good numbers for the relatively new champ at this point. And we had the golden team of Mike Goldberg and Joe Rogan. But enough talk. Let's just get to the fights. First up, we have two massive retro review debuts with the Korean zombie Chan Sung Jung taking on Mark Hominick. The Korean zombie, what a delight to see him fight. He got his nickname for his incredible durability, his willingness to move forward. He was so popular that before he was in WEC, Dana White was wearing his shirts at like weigh-ins and stuff. Mark Hominick, though, in past reviews, I've always talked about these dudes who don't get the recognition for being awesome or exciting fighters. Mark Hominick, congratulations for this illustrious honor. For real, though, go check out his fight with Yves Jaboin in WEC. So, the fight starts, both dudes touch gloves, Mark Hominick steps in for a left hook.
Oh! Dropped early! And it is all over! Just like that!
That was quick. I guess you have to score it then? Hard one to score since it's shorter than me even talking about it, so let's just go with a fitting 7 out of 10. But really tough for Mark Hominick, though. He's in his home province of Canada, and this was his first fight back after the death of his head coach, Sean Tompkins, at the much too young age of 37. Next up, we have another name that could be a hidden hammer in Brian Ebersole. He's taken on Claude Patrick, who stepped up on short notice for Rory McDonald, who was injured, but he did have a win over tough winner, James Wilkes, while being unbeaten in the UFC. First round, Ebersole is really working for a takedown early on. He's starting to press Patrick against the cage. Patrick does latch onto a guillotine choke as they go down. Eventually, Ebersole gets out, tries to grind. Patrick makes his way back to the feet. Ebersole moves forward with some strikes, trying to get into the clinch, and for the remainder of the round, they just kind of clinch against the cage with Ebersole looking for a takedown. Second round, Ebersole's feinting, circling hard with Patrick not cutting the cage off, just chasing. Eventually, they clinch up. Ebersole presses him to the cage, and I'm gonna just be honest with you, this whole round is like this. Patrick did land the shot clean at one point, and Ebersole controlled the clinch, so I guess more towards Ebersole. Third round, and something actually happens. Ebersole shoots. Patrick has a great sprawl. Ebersole does turn the corner and get it. Patrick gets up, but Ebersole's staying on him. Ebersole does hit a good throw to get Patrick back down, and he takes the back at one point even. Patrick fights back up. Another sprawl. Patrick goes for a choke. Another shot by Ebersole. Patrick sprawls, going for an anaconda, even trying to get the rollover. Doesn't get it, and that's the fight. Brian Ebersole wins by split decision. Let's just give this a 3 out of 10 and move on. Because next up, we have a light heavyweight battle between two legends, the owner of the second biggest head I have ever seen, Tito Ortiz, taking on Antonio Little Nog Nogueira. Little Nog, awesome. Not talked about enough. The dude is an absolute legend. In Pride, he was a monster where he went 7-2, with his only 2 losses coming from Sokoju in a crazy upset, and the other is against Shogun Rua in one of the greatest fights of all time. And Tito Ortiz, besides being a linguist on the level of Noam Chomsky, he is mostly known for being the only member of the UFC to be an aces and eights. Yeah. The battle of the two legends opened up with Tito launching a high kick into a flurry that seems to be throwing off the normally fantastic counter-striker. After landing a shot, Tito has a fantastic level change to look for a takedown. He doesn't get it, but they both clinch with both dudes just trading some good shots inside the clinch. Little Nog lands a massive left that stuns Tito. Big swarm of strikes with a knee up the middle landing hard. Big shots to Tito, but he's recovering pretty well, and he even manages to get Little Nog into his underrated guard. But like a hawk, Little Nog is picking up on this, starts blasting the ribs with punches and elbows. Eventually, more and more strikes coming in, and they stop it. The fight with Little Nog winning by TKO. Really quick pace to this fight, and as much as I rag on Tito, he actually looked pretty good in the opening seconds of the round. Not even seconds, like opening bit of the round, honestly. And he did get hurt, and that's all it takes with a guy like Nogueira sometimes. So I'm going to score this fight an 8 out of 10. But now we have our co-main event of the evening with a heavyweight rematch between Big Nog and Frank Mir. So I think Big Nog is a top 10 heavyweight of all time. An incredible career. Seriously, his UFC run is great, but his Pride run is even better. Some of the best fights of all time. And yeah, so what? He tried feeding a bus a carrot one time, but that should not take away from his legendary career. Frank Mir, on the other hand, I feel like is the UFC equivalent of him. No one at heavyweight was submitting guys off their back, except for these two guys at the time. They both had underrated striking and underrated power, but were mostly feared for their legendary jiu-jitsu, so I think it's so fitting that their careers are just so linked. Early on, we see Mir kind of backing up while Nog is pressing forward with pressure, looking for some punches. Mir launches a left straight, but it's tucked under, and he's defending a single against the cage now. Mir does hit a really sweet trip, but Big Nog does get back to his feet really quick with him pressing Mir to the cage. A beautiful 1-2 lands. Mir is wobbled hard. He's going down for the leg. Nogueira's on top and raining punches. Nogueira goes for his top tier guillotine choke. Mir somehow wakes up, reverses positions to land on top. Minotauro looks to hit a super cool switch, but one of his arms is isolated, so Mir just kind of snags it and gets a Kimura lock, who in turn snaps that arm. And that's the fight. So, for that foreshadowing I did a little bit ago, this is the fight I showed at Date once. I haven't heard back from her since. But that sucks for her, though, because I think this fight's better than any cheap date. So this fight's a 10 out of 10 for me, just for that finish alone. Pure disgusting violence, and I'm probably sick or something, but I love it, you know. Great comeback win, too. Big sucker for comeback wins. Oh, 10 out of 10 for sure. But now we have our main event of the evening with known truck stop pill connoisseur Jon Jones taking on Lyoto the Drag Machida. Rashad Evans was initially supposed to take on Jones here for this massive grudge match, but Rashad pulled out, so Machida steps in. I think it was only like 7 weeks notice, though, so like a full training camp I think of as 8 or more weeks. Here, I think it was like 7 or 6, which is pretty comparable, in fairness. But Machida, he lost the belt to Shogun, and then he had a really close fight with Rampage Jackson that he lost, but then he had this great crane kick knockout against the legend Randy Couture, which did retire him. Jon Jones, well, he became champion after beating Shogun Rua, who was fresh off a knee surgery that honestly probably ruined Shogun's career. But after that, he started his eye-poking ways against Rampage, getting a submission win, and now he's here for his second title defense, but more importantly, he's here for his Retro Review debut. The fight opens up. Jones is looking to step in, try and land a couple strikes at range, but Lyoto is moving very well to avoid most of them. One other aspect of Machida's game is to lull his opponents into a false sense of confidence, then going for this blitz. Jones is looking to extend his arms and stick the fingers out anytime Machida does this. I seriously do not understand how refs were okay with this for so long. Jones is starting to get frustrated, though, and is looking to hand fight his way in. From here, Machida blasts him, nearly knocking Jones down. It's a great shot, and honestly, good chin for Jones to take this. Jones goes out in the second round, looking to be a little bit more patient, which is good, and he's really attacking with lead kicks to the legs. He does go for a body kick, quickly blitzed on by Machida. Jones does land a good right hand that turns into a clinch, which turns into a takedown. From here, he lands some elbows with one of them cutting Machida open gnarly. Lyoto has his back to the cage, and he stops circling. Jones then feints a kick to draw a counter from Lyoto, then cracks him with this hard left hand. Machida hits the mat hard. He gets his neck snatched on. Huge standing guillotine, and after a moment, Jones drops him as Machida just goes out cold. Then you can hear Greg Jackson tell Jon Jones to go check on Lyoto, get some fans. As Jones at the time was doing his thing where he pretends he's a really good guy. In fairness, in the year 2023, he's still kind of doing that. All Jon Jones dislikes aside, this fight's actually pretty solid. It's pretty good, actually. 8.5 for sure. Very interesting stylistic matchup. And while I often find myself going, oh, I wish it was a full camp for Machida, I think he only missed like a week or two, which kind of makes me wonder like if there would have been any difference in that 1 week or so. Jones would go on to have a career that many people, not me, are going to say is one of the greatest ever, while having a controversy list so long that making a top 10 list of it would be difficult. Seriously, the man has failed more drug tests than anyone in UFC history, and is still called great. I don't understand. I don't understand. Machida, he went down to middleweight, where he finished his career and is actually probably more associated with middleweight than he is at 205. The man did have some bangers, though, at 185, though. I love his fight with Chris Weidman. For my final score of this event, though, I'm going to give it an enthusiastic 8 out of 10. I really want to go higher, but that Ebersole-Patrick fight really just kills the momentum of this card. Great stuff, though, and I even joined my watch of the prelims, which I normally do, but I actually had fun on the prelims when I wasn't that excited going into them. But that's it for me. Once again, thank you to Tom Keegan for making the request to our Patreon for this retro review. I love doing these Patreon requests for the series. I can't wait to do more in the future. And if you have a card that you want me to go down and review for the Patreon, go ahead, make a request. I'll do basically anything I can get my hands on. Pride, WEC, UFC, obviously, Strike Force, and even Pancrase. I'll even do another Connor card. But be sure to check me out on the second channel, INC Live, where I recap UFC cards right after they happen. And that's mostly where I am. I'm Joe with the INC. Thank you for watching.